All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video, we're going to be looking at the best goalies to own for the second half of the season. The top 8, in fact, actually top 9, I guess. We have an A, an 8A, and an AB. 8B, kind of like we did in the top 10 defensemen in our last video. So be sure to go check those out, top 10 forwards and top 10 defensemen on the channel. Rankings wise for the second half of the season, or at least my rankings at least. It was tough for this one for goalies. I thought 8 would be a good number, but it was so hard to leave some of these guys out. So as we get into them, I'll talk about why I left some of these star-studded goalies, I guess you can call them, out of the top 8. All right, so looking at goalie 8B, but first I just want to get into the 3 guys that I left just outside of my top 8 on the list this year. One of them, Andrei Vasilevskiy, unfortunately. I know obviously his volume is really solid. He was hurt to start the year, so people might think I forgot about him, but obviously not. He's still a great goaltender. I just don't have a ton of faith in this Tampa team defensively. I think they've taken a really big step back the last 2 seasons. We see it every time Jonas Johansson plays, to be honest. Tampa Bay really falters defensively because they don't have Vasilevskiy back there. So Vasilevskiy obviously going to have a good rest of the season. I just don't think he's quite there yet. Jake Ottinger, also a guy left off this list. He was on this list and then I took him off because his numbers just aren't that great this season. Like 900 save percentage. If you look at his last recent win streak as well, his numbers are not that encouraging either. Dallas, a very good team, and defensively as well. I just don't think I could get there with the Stars. And then the last one is Sorokin. Same kind of thing with Tampa Bay. I just don't think that the Islanders have what it takes defensively to put Sorokin in a top 8 goalie conversation-wise for fantasy hockey. He has the most saves, or most shots against saves, I guess, this season, which just kind of goes in with the fact that the Islanders are horribly defensively. Now, if saves are really weighted in your league, then maybe I push Sorokin in that top 8, but we're going to be looking at wins and obviously goals against, the fewest goals against possible as we look at the actual top 8 for this video. All right, so the first goalie, 8B, Igor Shesterkin. On the New York Rangers. So have him just inside of this top 8, top 9 list for the second half of the season here. Hopefully he can find his footing in the second half. It's been a very mediocre year for Igor. If you look at his stats there on the bottom, a 278 goals against, right around a 900 save percentage. And to be honest, on paper, Jonathan Quick has been the better goalie out of the 2 of them. He has a better save percentage, goals against, but Igor has strung together back-to-back wins, including a shutout against the Calgary Flames. But with Quick in the fold, I see Igor finishing with about 50 starts, maybe 52 starts. Last year, he was a top 8 fantasy hockey goalie with 58 starts. Now, I think the Rangers are going to finish better positionally than they did last season. I still think Igor's right in the top 8-ish area. The fact that Quick is kind of there stealing some of his starts, and I'm just not totally sold on how he's playing right now. He's been rather inconsistent, hasn't been able to string a ton of games together well, especially recently, so that's why he's in the spot. Coming in at the other 8 spot is Aiden Hill on the Vegas Golden Knights. So obviously he missed a decent amount of time over the course of this season with a couple injuries, but Aiden Hill's played 20 games and his numbers are absolutely fantastic. I would have him a little bit higher on this list, but there's a couple reasons why I don't. But 14 wins in 20 starts is very solid. He also leads the NHL in goals against and save percentage wise. So you'd think, why isn't this guy higher on this list? And there's a couple reasons why. Vegas has been very solid defensively, top 10 in expected goals against, but top 12 in shots allowed. So sure, they're allowing a decent amount of shots, but the quality scoring chances aren't really there for the other teams when they are playing Vegas. Vegas still rather hurt in terms of injuries wise. You know, Eichel's still hurt, probably going to be back in another month, maybe the end of February if we're lucky. Shea Theodore is still hurt, and a couple other guys. There's just a long list of players that are injured for this Vegas Golden Knights team. The biggest thing here is through 20 games played, Hill is 4th in goals saved above expected in the NHL. Now, every person or every goalie ahead of him on that list has at least 35 starts. You're looking at Connor Hellebuck, Thatcher Demco, Jacob Markstrom. All of these guys have higher expected goals saved or goals saved above expected number, but it makes sense because they've played more games. So Aiden Hill has really been the reason why the Golden Knights are winning games when he is starting in net. You know, so it's almost unrealistic to think he can keep this up at this rate. Another reason why Logan Thompson gets a decent amount of starts as well. You know, he's not on that Saros Georgiev tier where he's going to have 60 plus starts this season. Logan Thompson in the month of November, when this season did start for Vegas, you know, they played 10 games in November. Hill started 6. 6, and Logan Thompson started 4 there as well. So I think it's still rather split. I think we'll probably see Aiden Hill finish with like 40 starts on the season maybe, which for the rest of the season will definitely keep him in the top 10, I think, and then even maybe propel him into that top 15 range for the season. But his volume isn't quite there, and I think we're going to see a little bit of regression from Aiden Hill because he's just playing a little too good for my life. All right, number 7 on this list, Alexander Georgiev on the Colorado Avalanche. You just have to keep Georgiev in the top 8 because of his sheer volume that he gets. He has 43 starts this season, which is more than any other goalie. He also has 27 wins, which also leads that category amongst goalies this season. The reason he's not higher on this list is because his stats aren't all that great, and we're starting to see him play a little bit worse just after the All-Star break here. Now, the Avalanche have had a very tough schedule, but more recently his numbers haven't been that great. And even looking at his goalie stats, like 294 goals against, an 898 save percentage, doesn't have any save percentage inside within 900, which obviously isn't that great. Not a number you want to carry. You want to be right around the 915 to 930 range to be considered like really winning games for your team. And I think Colorado's just a really good team, and that's why he's still in this top 8. He's going to continue to win games, and there's no other goalie that Colorado has at this point. So maybe they're going to make a move at the deadline to acquire somebody else, because Francouz is out for the season. They said that down in November. And then Justus Anunen, who's come and played a couple games, has been absolutely shit. So Georgiev is in this top 8. I don't think he's necessarily a top 8 goalie in the NHL in terms of skill-wise, but because he plays on Colorado, who has one of the best defensive units in the NHL when healthy, and there's no other goalies behind him, he just has to be in the 7th spot. All right, so coming in number 6 on the list is Stuart Skinner on the Edmonton Oilers. And if you saw the first half of this season, you'd probably think I'm insane for putting him in here, but he's actually managed to be a top 12 goalie after his horrid start, and it's because of that huge 16-game win streak. And a lot of people are like, oh, the reason why they won all those games is because the Oilers just score a ton of goals. It's not necessarily the case, to be honest. The wins are obviously great for Stuart Skinner, but if you look at their win streak since December 21st, that's when their 16-game win streak started. Obviously ended a little bit earlier than February 12th, or when this video is being recorded. But Skinner, in his 14 starts over their huge win streak, 12-2 with a 157 goals against and a 944 save percentage, leads the NHL in all categories since that date as well. And the big reason why I think Skinner can keep these numbers up, for one, I think the Oilers have a relatively easier schedule for sure. They're still obviously fighting for a playoff spot, so every win counts. And they're 3rd in expected goals against this season, which means they're actually playing a lot better defensively than we saw at the beginning of the season, and even compared to last season as well. Maybe it was the coaching change, who knows, but that obviously helps Stuart Skinner as well, and helps you believe that these numbers aren't just a fluke, and he's not just playing out of his mind. He's playing in front of a really solid defensive unit now, and he's also playing well on top of that. All right, coming in number 5 on the list is Jacob Markstrom on the Calgary Flames. Markstrom having the biggest bounce back season, maybe other Thatcher Demco also in that conversation, but Markstrom was relatively bad last season. One of the reasons why the Flames definitely struggled a little bit more than a lot of other people thought they were going to, but he's been so good this season. Leads the NHL in goals saved above expected, which means he single-handedly continues to win the Calgary Flames games, especially recently. And I'll tell you why I put that emphasis on the recently. You look at his last 5 games played, 4-1, 141 goals against, and a 956 save percentage. Over that same 5-game span, Calgary's expected goals against per game is 3.12, which is 18th in the NHL. Their actual goals against per game was 4th, 1.6 over that span. So that's just exactly what that goal saved above expected stat means. You know, there's that they have the analytics team tracking all the expected goals and all the high danger quality chances that could be goals, but Markstrom is just, he's not letting anything in the net. Even when they lost 2-0 to the Rangers, he made insane saves to make sure that game honestly didn't get out of hand in the same kind of rate. So I think Markstrom has definitely been standing on his head, has been really good this season. I think there's some regression to have here a little bit, because I just don't know if he can continue up with this pace, especially what he's on over his last 5 games played. Like, he's playing like prime Martin Brodeur right now. So I think he'll move off of that a little bit more here. The Flames, I still think, are a team obviously vying for a playoff spot. And the biggest question here is now maybe Jacob Markstrom might get traded. I honestly highly doubt it. He has a no move clause. Apparently, he doesn't like to be bothered with this kind of stuff in the middle of the season, especially when he's playing this well too. A trade could really screw up his psyche. But if he stays on the Flames, I think he's a top 5 goalie for the rest of the season. Flames have the 11th easiest schedule as well. He's playing really well. You have no other reason to believe he won't continue or at least drop off that far. All right, coming in at number 4, Sergei Bobrovsky on the Florida Panthers. After last year's miraculous playoff run for this Panthers team and Sergei Bobrovsky, he just continues to play really well. And so does this Panthers team as well. This season, he's 20th in goals saved above expected, which means Florida's defense is just playing really well. And if you look at the stats and what they've done this season, it's very apparent. They're second in expected goals against and goals against per game this season, second in scoring chances allowed per game, third in high danger chances allowed, and then second in shots allowed. So top 3 in pretty much every important defensive category that you can think of. And that obviously helps Sergei Bobrovsky as well. Since December 23rd, too, if you want to look at Bobrovsky's stats, 11-1-1 with a 228 goals against and a 920 save percentage. So he has a goals against above 2, which obviously that's still fine because we're comparing the stats that I just rattled off from Jacob Markstrom and Stuart Skinner over their massive stretches. So those are very solid numbers. The Panthers don't necessarily have an easy schedule for the remaining of the season, but we could still see the Panthers have a really good second half and Sergei Bobrovsky be a guy who's a beneficiary of that as well. All right, the third goaltender I have on my list is Thatcher Demco. The biggest, honestly, breakout, bounce back, whatever you want to call it. He's been one of the best goalies in the NHL this season. He leads all goaltenders in fantasy points scored this season as well. Yeah, there's really not much to say about this team or Thatcher Demco and the Vancouver Canucks at this point because they continue to kind of go against the grain. Thatcher Demco is the reason why the Canucks are not the sole reason, but is one of the biggest reasons why the Canucks have been so good this season. 5 shutouts on the year. I think he's third in goals saved above expected as well. And I think overall, though, the reason why I don't have Demko as number 1 for the second half like he did in the first half is because I think overall this Vancouver team is due for a little bit of regression. I think they're going to lose a couple more games than we saw in the first half. They definitely, puck luck was on their side in that first half of the season, I will say. They're still a great team. I'm not discrediting what they've done to this point, but they have the highest PDO this season, which is team save percentage and shooting percentage combined. Them and the Bruins, top 2 in the NHL this year, which generally means they're going to be due for a little bit of regression, whether it be in the regular season or in the playoffs as well. Something we've seen with the Rangers actually a little bit more recently in the playoffs as well. But Demko's numbers at home have just been outright crazy this season. 17 wins in 20 starts with a 2.22 goals against and a 929 save percentage and 4 out of his 5 shutouts coming at home as well. So if you have Demko, you're obviously starting him in every night, but you're taking advantage of those home starts as well because he's clearly played a lot better in those. All right, coming in at number 2 on the list, probably the one that will create the biggest argument or some comments for sure, and that's Saros on the Nashville Predators. Why do I have Saros so high up? I'll explain for a couple reasons. One, he has consistently had the most volume over the last 2 seasons, 60 plus starts over the last 2 years. He has the second most starts this year, only behind Alexander Georgiev. And I think there's so much room for improvement if you're looking at Saros' stats and what he's done the last 2 years as well. Maybe I'm relying too heavily on the last 2 years and thinking he can bounce back here, but a 297 goals against this year, a 902 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. His goals saved above expected 1.9. You look at his last 3 seasons, not a single season he had a goals against above 2.7, and he had an average save percentage of right around 920. And you look at his last 2 seasons, last season, second in goals saved above expected, only behind Ilya Sorokin when the season was all said and done. And then 2 seasons ago, he was 9th in goals saved above expected. This season, he's outside the top 40. So he's currently the 6th best fantasy hockey goalie, and you're telling me that he's essentially played his worst hockey over the last 3 seasons. Nashville also has the 5th easiest remaining schedule. So there's just so many factors to me that are pointing towards Saros having an insane second half of the season, and I think we're going to see that happen. And coming in number 1 on the list, Connor Hellebuyck on the Winnipeg Jets, the current Vezina favorite. There's just no reason to believe why Connor Hellebuyck is going to play any worse in the second half than he did in the first half, and he played outstanding in the first half. 37 starts, 24 wins, a 2.19 goals against, 925 save percentage, and 2 shutouts, second in the NHL in goals saved above expected, only behind Jacob Markstrom. Out of all goalies in the top 6 of fantasy points scored amongst goalies so far this season, he has the fewest starts, but the second most points. He's also allowed more than 3 goals against in just 4 of his 37 starts. 4 of his 37 starts, he's allowed more than 3 goals. And the craziest part, all those games came within his first 8 starts. So since November 2nd, he has not allowed more than 3 goals against in a game where he started, which is just nuts. It just goes to show or prove even further that he is more likely than not the Vezina winner at this point. Winnipeg also has a decently easy schedule for the second half, 10th easiest. And Rick Bowness as a head coach just makes such a difference. Like, he's such a defensive-minded coach. Honestly, if you look at Jake Ottinger, his best seasons might even be behind him because of what Rick Bowness did for that Dallas Stars team. And now we're seeing it for the Jets. Jets. Last year, you maybe not seen it as much. It's still going through a little bit of transition, but this year it seems like the entire team is bought in. Defensively, they're playing a whole lot better, and just as a team, they're playing really well too. So Connor Hellebuyck, the #1 ranked fantasy hockey goalie for the rest of the season. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the top 8 fantasy hockey goalies for the remainder of this season. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out the top 10 forwards and defensemen if you haven't yet as well, and I'll see you guys in the next video.